Allora, benvenuti e benvenuti a tutti e a tutte. Welcome to everyone. So this evening we are going to start an event that we have cared a lot, that is the Art Night of Venice. The Art Night of Venice finally is a night that starts from Ca' Foscari University, and it's trying to involve the young people, the students, the young people, students, a new generation of art lovers to Venice. That is the place to be for art, for contemporary art, and for everything that's around this topic. This year we decided as CREA to have a program focalized about how art and contemporary art could be connected to the society. How art and contemporary art could be also a part of the discussion of the progress of the society. This show, for example, had a long run. We started to talk about how to do that here and how to do here 2 years ago when we met David Perry and he came here with Crip Arts, and they start to think about how to use the window of Venice, the biggest windows in terms of contemporary art of Venice, to promote a huge legacy. That's the legacy of the AM. The AM is Disability Art Movement. That's a movement that starts in the 70s, still active, still fighting, and focalized in using contemporary art as a medium to try to take the society to have care about civil rights of everyone. I like and I love to say that when we are asking to our society to be more careful, to be more focused about some civic rights of someone, is going to grow all the society. I love, for example, when I have seen the setup that we did here, and then Rebecca is going to talk. Seeing all the part of Keith Armstrong archive, it was nice to see how in the table are not mentioned just fights for disability art rights, but are mentioned fights for a lot of other issues that could be LGBTQ+, environmental, because finally society should grow up as a single piece, not step by step. I love that finally you did everything in such an ironic, colored, and so strong and powerful way. So Rebecca Wymant is going to talk about how they changed this place that, as you know, it's part of a carpenter studio. It's the carpenter studio of Legno e Legno di Daniele Raunic, who is over there, and into, I think, the most important event in terms of disability art movement that was done yet. And they start to think about the space. We also were able to turn the space into something more accessible, because Venice, for example, is the worst city in terms of accessibility that could be found, because it's an ancient city, a lot of bridges, not thought to be contemporary, not thought to be helpful, not thought to be welcome. And finally, this space was also chosen and selected because it was able to welcome everyone. Something I'm very proud, after 2 months of this exhibition, of the running of this exhibition, that I received a lot of comment from the people who came, and the most common was a necessary exhibition. And you know, being a curator, working contemporary art, sometimes our question is, how to say, necessary? Are we something that is part of the life of everyone? And having this kind of feedback from the audience for us was very important. And you know, we had more than 80 exhibitions here since 2016, and I think that this one, it's one of the most important. So, Rebecca, to you, to show to our audience how you decided to turn this space into where we are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, so I'm Rebecca Wymant. I work for Shape Arts as a production assistant, but I've also recently just finished my Masters in Museum Studies with the University of Leicester. So for my final dissertation project, I based it on this show here as well. So I've done quite a lot of background research into lots of different things, which I will share with you now. So this is the first international exhibition about the disability arts movement. So it's the first time that this scale, the amount of work is actually here in a completely different place to the UK. So it's amazing to be able to showcase the work, the protest, everything that was kind of that everyone went through into this international space. So when I was doing my master's research, I spoke to all of the artists exhibiting, including Terence here, and David, the CEO of Shape. So he was the one that curated this space, and there were a lot of decisions and a lot of time, a lot of logistics that went into bringing it all together. So principal kind of findings and decisions from David that it was really important to curate this show with an activist intent. So to really use lived experience and to create this really immersive environment, this immersive aesthetic that kind of makes you feel that you are part of that protest, part of the movement yourselves. So there was a lot of models, including the circus aesthetic, which was used. So if you can imagine a circus, there are lots of bright banners, lots of colour, creating this kind of spectacle to really draw you into an area. So that's why there's some of the decisions are, for example, here with these big Down in Venice and the Crip Arte Spazio banners, really to capture your attention, to showcase that the disability arts movement is here, to really stand proud, and for you to come into the space, inviting you in to have a look around, and to also understand, because of the scale of them, how much of an important and large movement it is. And around the edge of the banners, they also join the struggle. So again, it makes you feel like you are part of that protest, you are involved in this movement with the artists and with everything that's happened previously. And then another model which was used was the aesthetic barriers. So I see as you came in, there's the big wooden letters, the SPZIO. So they are to represent barriers that disabled people have faced throughout history and still today. So it's not as easy for you just to kind of walk through. They're kind of blocking your sight, they're blocking particular areas that you might want to go and have a look at. So it's to symbolise that there is a lot of struggle and a lot that you need to kind of go through to be able to break through and to come and see this exhibition. And then the artist Keith Armstrong, who has done the background wall here and also the film negatives which are on that side. He was used as more of a backdrop. So to move away kind of from the usual white cube model, which galleries sometimes choose to use. So that can kind of come across as like an elitist or maybe high-end particular way of showcasing work. But to have Keith Armstrong at the back, it just adds that extra narrative to the disability arts and rights movement, so you kind of understand a bit more and that's kind of taking over the space a bit more as a way to kind of add to that narrative that this is what we're talking about. It's part of the disability arts movement. So a lot of the work that we have has also come from the National Disability Arts Collection and Archive, which is a heritage project run by Shape. So an example of that is Tony Heaton shaping Not Stirred pyramids. So that was a piece which has been recorded as one of the first performance pieces of the movement. And Tony went in whilst they were doing a block telethon. So in the UK, that was a way for people to try and raise money for charities, but it was kind of done in a more of a patronising way to make people feel sorry for disabled people. However, disabled people did not want to be felt sorry for, they wanted change. So as a protest, Tony went down whilst this block telethon was on and threw a prosthetic leg at it. And it all came crashing down, made a massive scene. It was very loud in the room, but that was just an example of a way to showcase the power of what disabled people can do and to try and get people to understand that that's the change they wanted, not to be felt sorry for, but something different to happen. And then finally, another piece was the aesthetic of looking up. So David wanted to, he's made these films which are showcasing above, so he's interviewed some of the artists there. And it was a way again to showcase that actually, instead of historically kind of disabled people have been looked down on, they've not had that platform that they deserve. To have these films showcased up high, it forces people to look up at disabled people, for them to admire them and to showcase actually how powerful they are. So that was something which is really important to David, was to have these screens showcased up above. And then as you kind of go around as well, so Tanya Rabe-Weber here, she's a painter and has included a lot of really influential figures from that time and the movement. So yeah, at the end, if anyone has any questions about a particular picture at the end, just feel free to ask. And then we see, and then behind is Jason Wilshire-Mills as well. So he has created these sculptures, and there's also the blow-up piece outside, and that is something that he's always done. He's put masks over the face just because at the time when he was younger, he lost the ability to kind of feel anything from about the waist down. So the only thing that could feel was his face. So his mum used to draw and paint masks on him. So that is something that he will always have in his works, are masks on his pieces. So yeah, that's kind of like an overview of some of the curatorial decisions. It's been great to be part of this process, and yeah, anyone kind of has anything else they want to ask me about the process, we're going to do like some questions at the end, and if there's any other particular works. But so instead of me talking too much, we've also got Terence Birch here, which is amazing to have an artist with us in the space, and this is his piece just behind us called Grotesque Torso. So I'm just going to do some bit of questions and answers with Terence now. So let's find my page. Okay, so we'll start with the first one. So can you tell me a bit about your background and what inspired you to become an artist?
So my background is in fine arts. I studied a BA in London at Goldsmiths College. I also did an MA in painting at the Royal College of Arts. So that's my educational background. I grew up in a small village outside Croydon. There wasn't really much going on, let alone the idea of becoming an artist. It was kind of this odd concept within the community. But for me, like, art has always been a necessity. Like, I've needed to do it. And so when I grew up, I had an amputation when I was very young, and I turned to art as a way of expressing myself and the imaginative worlds. It just was very natural at the time.
Yeah, no, the art is a really great way to really express yourself, but also process things that are happening within your own life at the same time, for sure. So could you just tell us a bit about this particular piece that you've got here? That would be great, thank you.
So the title of the work is Grotesque Torso, and in brackets it says, "Oh Richard, darling, you can prove a lover," which is a reference to Richard III's play by Shakespeare, and the opening speech of the "Now is the winter of our discontent." And in this speech we have Richard III, who's portrayed as someone with scoliosis. And this is a condition that I share with the Richard III. And so he is, in his speech, he's talking about essentially love and hate and acceptance of his body within. So there's a lot of, it's since he's chosen to become he's basically rejected, so he turns inwards that he's going to become a villain because he cannot be loved. So I'm looking at that from my perspective as somebody that is disabled, and how these negative perceptions of disability still influence how we are accepted in society or not. And so the title relates to that, and so the actual work is a torso, and it's on 2 crutches, or they could be wings. And I made this piece when I was in Chichester for Shape Art's flagship awards, the Adam Reynolds. And during this time I was based in Chichester and I was at the Talent House Gallery and looking at their collection of British modernism, and a particular gallery where they had miniature sculptures, so really small, and one of them was a leaning figure, so the body was quite contorted, it was leaning, and another one was a torso. So I was looking at the specifics of the torso in art and scoliosis in the back. So that's how it kind of was beginning. The work also references the painter Andrea Mantegna. There's a piece where it's like a triumphal procession of Julius Caesar. It's about Rome being so great. And in one of the panels, this painting was on show in London, and it was part of the Charles I private collection. So one of the pictures showed somebody walking with a pole and armor on the top of the pole, and the person was quite weary and exhausted by it's essentially a loss of from war. So the armor is empty, but you're processioning it along. So there was a sense of grief, and I was thinking about disability and also a life not lived. So a grief of a life that you could have had. And the work itself is made from plaster. It was originally modelled in clay, and it used a lot of clay. It was quite weighty, and I was playing with this idea of being more present with the work and actually feeling. So as I was sculpting, I was becoming more present with my own condition and my experiences. The work itself is quite assembled quite crudely, and I think that speaks to kind of a sense of materials being a sense of poverty of materials, and how in disability, if you are marginalized or you are outside of society, you might struggle with accessing materials so life becomes a bit more about hardship. And yet we still kind of cobble these materials together to create something. So, yeah.
And I know you've said before about the work's actually really heavy, and that kind of relates to something you were saying about do you want to kind of explain about that?
So the weight of the work is maybe 150 kilograms. It's very heavy to lift, and that when I was making the work, I was thinking about the psychological side and the physical side, and I related weight sometimes to the way my back feels. it's like full of cement. So it's very difficult to move. It's quite stiff and heavy. So it's kind of like an exteriorization of that internal world.
So I was going to ask you a little bit about the disability arts movement. So has that, and does it influence your practice? And do you kind of consider yourself as a disability rights activist, or how do you kind of see yourself and your work within that movement?
I feel like the disability arts movement feels like the family that you choose, and it's kind of, there is a shorthand where you see work made by someone and you understand it, what is going on for that person in a way that when you see like a close friend and you think, oh, they're having a bad day, you don't need to say any words, you kind of just understand. And I think that's with the community aspect with the disability arts movement, is that's what I get from it there. As far as being a campaigner, I wouldn't have gone on marches or riots in the way that's been documented. My approach to activism is through just making art and occupying spaces in the contemporary art world. So where we talk about elitism in certain art education, for me, I wanted to study there, and I didn't really accept the no for an answer. So when you look at a lot of art and a lot of commercial art that is selling, there is not the landscape for it, and certain classes don't necessarily want to be interested in disability art or disabled people. So for me, occupying that space is the activism. It's turning up, making the work, and hopefully changing the dialogue from that.
Absolutely, I think that it's so important, and over time there's been a lot of kind of negativity, and potentially some curators or museums and galleries have chosen not to showcase work by disabled artists, or it has been shown but in kind of portrayed in really negative and patronising ways. So from my research that I did, there's still quite a lot of curators who are still too scared to showcase work by disabled artists, which is a shame and more definitely needs to be done. So in terms of the representation side of things, what can curators do, or museums and galleries to represent disabled artists, and how would you in particular like to be represented?
In terms of curation and curated shows, like recently I was in Oxford at the Pitt Rivers Museum, and they had what's called a trail of for disabled voices and the objects in their collection, which was great, but it was still a trail. It was very small scale, and you would just kind of go around. This exhibition is very different. It's more a statement. This is a big show, and it makes you look up, and not in the sense that bigger is always better, but it's more of this is something, rather than we're just going to put disabled people in just a small part of the exhibition, like a token, or just a footnote, like a marginalized. So for me, in terms of being represented, firstly, it's just being represented, like being in a show, being included, is very important, like to begin with. In terms of, I suppose I would like to just be considered as a figurative sculptor who works with ideas about prosthetics, loss, repair, ideas about trauma and fragmentation. I look to artists like Auguste Rodin, for example, in terms of the fragmented body and how in classical sculpture you find a lot of statues with missing limbs, and this has kind of been continued through Rodin's work, and where I kind of try to interpret that, it's from a position of embodied lived experience. So when I see like a classical sculpture missing a limb, I relate to it in a very different way. And I think that's how I would like to position myself and say, because a lot of the time, in terms of disability and in academia, a lot of the time when you talk about disability, it becomes a bit removed from a person's lived experience. It can sometimes become quite high-minded and not necessarily nothing to do with like what I look at and know what's that about, but then they're apparently claiming that it is about disability. So for me, it thinks about those things, but at the same time, I like to think of myself as a sculptor, and that the ideas are implicit within that.
Yeah, I think, are there any kind of improvements or maybe innovations in the design or kind of the way that exhibitions are portrayed to help with the accessibility and to kind of showcase disability arts a bit more? Is there anything that you think could be changed?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I'm not like a designer, but like I mentioned about the Curating for Change program at Pitt Rivers, where they use co-production as a method, which is a model where in the UK, within the mental health services, there's a model called co-production, whereby patients and users of the service help shape the service. So it's like a collaboration between like the NHS and the service users. So, which speaks, I think collaboration works within sort of power dynamics of how we are how we relate to each other and how we want to go forwards in making things work for us. So co-production can, as a concept, can hopefully be used within galleries as well. So if you're a gallerist or a director, you can work with your artist in this way. And also artists, how they get paid, how artists are available to work, disabled artists, when they are experiencing disability, often are on benefits. And the UK benefit system, it doesn't work for you. And in the past, there was a lot of austerity and cuts to benefits, which were gained through the disability rights movement. And they've slowly been eroded over time. And we are in a position where it's, to make art, you sometimes feel like you're a liar or you're milking the system. And there are other people, the non-disabled people, who are very hardworking and they're strivers, and so there's kind of an opposition between society, which is just not healthy. So I think going forwards, I think if curators or people who run galleries are understanding of how these external issues affect the art that an art is made, we need allies that are fighting for better treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that relationship between artists and curator and museum and gallery is so vital, and those conversations, not just about the work that's going to be on show, but right from the very beginning, really clearly explaining what's needed, working with the artist to understand their requirements and what they would like as well. So yeah, I think there's definitely more that can be done for sure. And then just kind of coming to a little bit of a close now, just going to ask you a bit more about your participation in the show. So just reflecting on the opportunity to be here, to have your work, how do you think, what legacy are you kind of hoping to leave in terms of advancing disability arts internationally, but how have you felt about being part of this show?
That's huge.
That's a big one,
Yeah.
yes. Can break it down a bit.
Thinking about legacy is always,
Yeah.
it feels a bit egotistical, so maybe I'm not too sure about my answer here. I obviously, it's a great honour to be involved in this exhibition, to be included. It's fantastic to be surrounded by so many great artists, and again to feel at home, and to be able to relate to the work. It's fantastic. In terms of legacy, it's just keep on turning up. I'd like to continue the work of being a figurative sculptor, and just keep making work that is about being a disabled person, and my embodied experience, and working in collaboration with people.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it sounds great, and it's been amazing to work with you on this project and to have your work here shown internationally. It's been amazing. So thank you. I didn't know if there's anything else that you wanted to share that I've not asked you, but don't worry if not. It's no, all good. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to us both. I guess I'll say it's a great honour to be here representing Shape Arts, who are either disabled-led creative arts organisation, and again to be working with Terence and all the other artists. So I'd like to thanks to Pierre as well for having us here and for this opportunity to share with you this evening. So thank you very much for coming. I'll pass you back to Pierre.